Pablo Escobar, synonymous with drugs, violence, and wealth, was born in 1949 in Rio Negro, Colombia. This town, nestled in the Andes Mountains, was far from the empire he would build. Young Pablo had ambition beyond his humble beginnings. He started small, hustling on the streets of Medellin. Medellin offered both opportunity and lawlessness. He moved from petty theft to carjacking, then to cocaine. The 1970s saw a rise in U.S. cocaine consumption. Escobar seized this opportunity. His sharp mind and ruthlessness marked his early days. He established labs in the Colombian jungle. He created a vast distribution network in the U.S. Escobar became the king of cocaine, amassing billions. But his wealth came at a terrible price, paid in blood and suffering. The Medellin cartel, under Escobar's leadership, became a force of nature. They controlled every aspect of the cocaine trade, from production to distribution. Escobar, the ruthless CEO, ran his empire with an iron fist. He was feared and respected, a dangerous combination. He instilled loyalty through a mix of generosity and brutality. Escobar's power extended beyond the criminal underworld. He infiltrated the government, the police, and even the courts. Bribery was his weapon of choice, and it proved devastatingly effective. Those who couldn't be bought were eliminated. Judges, journalists, politicians, no one who dared to oppose Escobar was safe. His ruthlessness was legendary. He unleashed a wave of violence that terrorized Colombia. Car bombs exploded in city streets. Politicians were assassinated. Innocent people were caught in the crossfire. Escobar's message was clear: defy me, and you die. His brutality knew no bounds, and his grip on Colombia tightened. Through the fear and bloodshed, Escobar's legend grew. He was no longer just a drug lord, he was a phantom, a boogeyman. The Colombian government seemed powerless to stop him. He had become a state within a state, his power rivaling that of the government itself. Escobar's reach extended far beyond the borders of Colombia. His primary destination, the United States, with Miami as its epicenter. The demand for cocaine in the U.S. was insatiable, and Escobar was more than happy to supply it. He established a sophisticated smuggling network, using planes, boats, and even submarines to move his product. Escobar's ingenuity knew no bounds. He used every trick in the book to evade law enforcement. He built clandestine airstrips in remote jungles. He bribed officials to turn a blind eye. He even stashed cocaine shipments in shipments of legal goods like coffee and fish. The money poured in at an astounding rate. Escobar's wealth became legendary. He built luxurious mansions, owned fleets of cars, and even had his own private zoo. But amidst the opulence, he never forgot where he came from. He poured money into poor neighborhoods, building schools, hospitals, and soccer fields. His Robin Hood persona resonated with the poor and marginalized who saw him as a savior, a protector. They turned a blind eye to his brutality, choosing to see only his generosity. Escobar, the master manipulator, understood the power of the people. He cultivated his image carefully, knowing that their support was his greatest shield. Section 4. Silver or Lead, Escobar's Reign of Terror. The Colombian government, under pressure from the United States, finally decided to act against Escobar. The Plata o Plomo, Silver or Lead, era began. Escobar responded with characteristic brutality. He unleashed a wave of terror that targeted anyone who dared to oppose him. Judges, journalists, and politicians were assassinated. Bombs exploded in city streets, killing and maiming innocent civilians. Escobar's message was clear: if you stand against me, you will pay the ultimate price. Fear became a way of life in Colombia. Despite the escalating violence, Escobar remained popular among certain segments of the population. He cultivated a Robin Hood image, portraying himself as a man of the people, fighting against a corrupt and indifferent government. He poured money into impoverished neighborhoods, building houses, schools, and soccer fields. Escobar's strategy worked. He created a base of support that made him almost untouchable. The Colombian government, weakened by corruption and intimidation, seemed powerless to stop him. Escobar, the ruthless outlaw, had become a powerful force in Colombian society. Section 5. Playing Robin Hood, the people's patron. Escobar, despite the bloodshed, was not universally hated. He understood the power of image and cultivated a Robin Hood persona. He lavished money on the poor, building houses, schools, and even a football stadium in Medellin. He was seen as a champion of the people, a benefactor who cared. This image wasn't entirely a facade. Escobar, who had known poverty himself, genuinely wanted to help the less fortunate. He funded medical clinics, gave money to struggling families, and even handed out cash in the streets. This generosity earned him fierce loyalty among the poor, who saw him as their savior. His political ambitions grew alongside his wealth and power. He craved legitimacy, a way to wash away the blood on his hands. He even managed to get elected to Congress, believing that a position of power would grant him immunity. However, his political career was short-lived. He was exposed as a criminal and forced to flee. Escobar's foray into politics revealed his ultimate goal to rule Colombia, not from the shadows but from the halls of power. He wanted to be seen not as a criminal but as a leader, a savior, but his ambition would ultimately be his downfall. Section 6. The Walls Close In, Hunting the Kingpin. By the late 1980s, the Colombian government, with the backing of the United States, had had enough. They formed a special police unit, Search Block, tasked with bringing Escobar down. A deadly game of cat and mouse ensued, with Escobar always one step ahead. Escobar, however, was losing control. His enemies were closing in. The violence escalated, reaching unprecedented levels. He was a hunted man, constantly on the run. His empire, built on cocaine and blood, was crumbling. His family became his Achilles heel. He adored his wife and children and couldn't bear to be separated from them. This weakness was exploited by his enemies, who used his family to track him down. Finally, in 1993, the net closed in. On December 2, 1993, Escobar was cornered and killed in a shootout with Colombian authorities. His death marked the end of an era, a turning point in the drug war. But the legacy of Pablo Escobar, the boy from Rio Negro who became a ruthless kingpin, continues to cast a long shadow over Colombia. Section 7. The Legacy of El Patron, Scarred but Not Forgotten. Escobar's death did not erase his impact. He left behind a country scarred by violence, its justice system compromised, its people divided. He remained a folk hero to some, a ruthless villain to others. His story became a cautionary tale about the seductive power of wealth and the corrosive effects of the drug trade. In the years since his death, Colombia has made strides in combating the drug trade and restoring the rule of law. But Escobar's legacy lingers. His story continues to fascinate and horrify, a reminder of a dark chapter in Colombian history. Escobar's life raises uncomfortable questions about poverty, corruption, and the allure of power. He was a product of his environment, a man who exploited the weaknesses of his society to amass wealth and power. But he was also a human being, capable of both great cruelty and surprising generosity. The story of Pablo Escobar is a complex one, full of contradictions and moral ambiguities. He was a criminal, a terrorist, a mass murderer, but he was also a son, a husband, a father, a friend. He was a man who inspired both hatred and adoration, fear and admiration. He was and remains an enigma.